Story 1. Loud eating and making exaggerated lip-smacking sounds while having a meal makes me think you are an annoying person. I can't help but think this because I was raised to believe that it is rude and that it is incredibly easy to avoid such behavior while eating. Part of me thinks they must be intentionally trying to be obnoxious. Story 2. When someone talks down to waiters, cashiers, or janitors, it takes no effort to be polite. You are not better than anyone just because you are the one ordering the coffee. Story 3. I judge dog owners who ignore leash laws, leave their dog's waste where it lands, or even worse, bag their dog's waste and then leave the filled plastic bag on the ground. Story 4. Lack of spatial awareness occurs when a group of 3 stops for a casual chat in the middle of a busy walkway, unaware of the flow of foot traffic. Story 5. Those loud, annoying cars with coffee can exhausts and big spoilers that serve no purpose weave in and out of traffic recklessly. You see a girl in the passenger seat who is likely the driver's girlfriend. Is she okay with dating him and riding in that car? Okay. Story 6. Their windshield wipers. If it's barely raining and someone has their wipers going at full speed, total judgment. Story 7. I have strong feelings about the father who spends the entire swimming lesson on his phone, while his kids upset everyone else. Story 8. Drivers who don't choose the right speed to merge onto the freeway can be frustrating. Either accelerate so I know you'll be merging in front of me at a faster speed, or slow down enough for me to understand your intention to slip in behind me. It's incredibly frustrating when someone's actions leave me uncertain about their intentions. Story 9. The cleanliness of people's cars, specifically the interior, is important to me. I believe that an unkempt exterior may deter people from wanting to vandalize or steal from it. Story 10. Always complaining about money but freely spending funds on eating out, the newest phone, and overall vanity items. Story 11. Not knowing the difference between two, and two is a common mistake. Additionally, confusing there, and there is prevalent. Misspelling words in general is an issue that autocorrect, spell check, and online resources should help with, yet errors still occur. Bonus. Adding unnecessary apostrophes is another frequent error. Story 12. Unchecked mental health issues. For example, my father is a 61-year-old combat veteran diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder from his time in the United States Navy. In April 2022, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and since then, he has become the worst version of himself imaginable. I understand that it's scary, and I know it is not fair, but he has done nothing to help himself cope with the reality of the situation. All he has done is bottle everything up and pretend like it's not happening. As a result, he has irreparably damaged his relationships with me, my brother, and nearly everyone else in the family. For anyone who thinks that getting help for childhood trauma, relationship trauma, or any other type of psychological trauma somehow makes you weak, I have news for you. You're a coward. Cowards run from their emotions. They hide from them because they're too scared to accept them. Facing your demons head-on is a scary thing to do. It takes a tough person to tackle them directly. That's what men really do. They do what's difficult despite how it might make them feel. Men face their issues and feel their feelings because it's hard. Locking your emotions up and projecting them onto the people you care about makes you weak. That's what weak people do. Story 13. After reading some of these posts, I'll add that when people use an opportunity to confess, they should be humble and perhaps create some social unity instead of virtue signaling. Story 14. Driving loud motorcycles and other noisy vehicles in quiet neighborhoods, especially late at night, and in park areas is disruptive. Tearing through wildlife areas in those parks is also concerning. Story 15. Celebrity worship. I have adult friends who unironically call themselves fans of Taylor Swift. Granted, I don't like any of her music except for one song, Wildest Dreams. But even with artists whose contributions I love, I would be embarrassed to let them define my identity. Story 16. When someone adds to the end of a word, especially when they are annoyed, it can be quite irritating. For example, phrases like, "Oh my God," and "yes" become "oh my godu" and "yesu." I find this very frustrating. I also dislike it when people say AKS instead of ask. Story 17. Not using turn signals. Weaving and speeding through traffic. Not returning grocery carts to the bin. Story 18. Not actually washing their hands in a public bathroom. They just splash water on their hands for a moment and leave, even with soap. They spend only 3 seconds washing their hands, which is ineffective. Story 19. Appearance, hygiene, behavior, preferences, and other factors are the things that everyone judges others for but often does not express. Story 20. Being in open or polyamorous relationships is common in my circles, which tend to be quite liberal. However, I find people in those relationships unappealing and prefer to avoid associating with them. I am not rude and I do not share my opinion, but I will not interact with them unless absolutely necessary. Story 21. When people tell me they homeschool their kids, I feel like saying, you can't figure out a tip without looking at the cheat sheet printed on the receipt. You're going to teach them algebra? Story 22. Helicopter parents. I understand your identity is intertwined with your children, but you need to loosen that grip someday, for their benefit. Story 23. My other comment may get downvoted, but this one hopefully will not be so controversial. People being on their phones for several minutes between sets at the gym. This frustrates me greatly. I often see individuals sitting and scrolling through social media for over 5 minutes at a time, only to do about 10 repetitions with low to moderate effort before returning to their phones. Can these individuals really not stay off their phones for 30 to 60 minutes a day and focus on their health? Truly irritates me to see this. Story 24. Road rage occurs when you attempt to punish a bad driver by becoming one yourself. This creates an unsafe situation for everyone around you. It seems that for many people it is also an issue of ego, which is even more frustrating. Just let it go. Story 25. When people eat with their mouths open, slurp their drinks, or are noisy in general, it can be annoying. Story 26. People who continue to have children because they only enjoy them in the baby and toddler stages should consider getting a dog. Story 27. When you see someone about to walk past you, it is important to instinctively move out of the way to let them pass. I experienced a moment some years ago when a class had ended. As we all got up to leave, a friend of mine stopped right in the middle of the doorway to have a conversation with someone. I became annoyed and asked him to move. We got into a heated argument because he felt I should have said, "Excuse me." My point was that you do not need to say, "Excuse me," when you clearly see over 30 people heading for the exit you are blocking. Now, it is a pet peeve of mine to see people fail to move when someone is clearly trying to get by. Story 28. Letting their dogs relieve themselves everywhere and not cleaning up after them. Please bring some poop bags. Story 29. If I see a couple together, either married or unmarried, walking up to a door, I observe if the man opens the door for the woman. I naturally take notice of this behavior. Story 30. When you are with a friend and they randomly decide to buy something expensive, and you know they cannot afford it. Story 31. People who answer a phone and start talking in the middle of a restaurant interrupt everyone's dinner. Stop it. Story 32. Please stop whistling in public so loudly. It overstimulates me and makes me think you are seeking attention. When someone is whistling, I will obviously look to see who it is. I am not referring to people whistling at a ball game as a celebration. I am talking about individuals walking around a grocery store and turning every head because they are nonstop whistling. Additionally, you may be contributing to wrinkles by constantly pursing your lips. Story 33. The way people park their cars reflects their level of care, attention to detail, and consideration for others. Story 34. Just throwing garbage on the ground in the forest, on the street, or anywhere else. What's wrong with you? Story 35. Not addressing their child's inappropriate behavior in public places, especially when the child is bullying others. Story 36. Honestly, people who do not learn from their mistakes and always seem to have something wrong in their lives cannot control what happens to them. They can only control their next choices. Yet, they consistently choose poorly, despite everyone advising them otherwise. It is truly unfortunate. Story 37. When people don't have their form of payment ready until after they hear the total, it can be frustrating. It seems as if some stores operate under the assumption that payment is optional. I understand it's not a major issue, but it really bothers me. Story 38. People who enter public transport without allowing others to exit first has unfortunately become the norm nowadays. Story 39. Just in general, there is a lack of self-awareness and consideration for surroundings. Every morning, I take my child to school, and some drivers stop right in the middle of the school parking lot entrance to drop off their children, causing a line to build up behind them. Story 40. Not so secret because I shout, "You're welcome," when people don't say thank you for holding the door open for them. Story 41. Wearing pajamas in public is frustrating. I may be lazy, but I still make the effort to wear jeans and a hoodie. Story 42. Providing free advertising for a car dealership by keeping the branded license plate frame and stickers on the vehicle. Story 43. People who attend church every week have their own religious beliefs, and I respect that. However, I find it hard to understand and sometimes find myself judging them for it. Story 44. When a person's sentences are mostly cuss words, I don't expect myself or anyone to speak in Old English, but come on, what's wrong with a sprinkle of those words for effect? Story 45. I wonder if this one will break 1,000 downvotes. I'm 3 years sober. Please congratulate me. I support anyone's struggle with substance abuse and believe we should allocate adequate tax dollars to combat it. Research shows that such programs pay for themselves due to lower homelessness, crime, job losses, bankruptcies, and more. Substance abuse is not a mark against your character. Helping people confront it is the right thing to do. My problem is spending my whole life being pressured to drink by those seeking social validation. Drunk individuals often ask for acknowledgement of their fun, and then once they quit, they request validation for their strength. It seems no matter what the drinker does, we must congratulate them for feeling special. I don't ask you to validate my choice to avoid the same fate as my mother, brother, and many classmates. It takes strength to gracefully refuse that beer year after year for your entire life. If you're having trouble staying sober, I support you, but why the constant need to feel special for doing the right thing? Story 46. If the person's nails are trimmed or not, I do not discriminate. I do not like long nails. Story 47. I am a waitress, and I observe families when every child older than 5 has an iPad. It is usually children around 8 to 11, which I believe is too old for that. If you need to distract your loud 5-year-old to enjoy dinner, that's understandable, but 8. Manners should be instilled sooner than that. These children wear headphones and do not engage with me or their parents. They often dismiss their parents when they attempt to communicate and say, "You just do it," when I am taking orders. Story 48. When they rant about how people with disabilities leech off society and say, "I have depression and I work just fine," it shows how out of touch they are for many reasons. Story 49. How people behave at the airport and on flights can reveal a lot. Discomfort often brings out the worst in individuals. Story 50. I don't judge people except for one thing: those who make religion their identity. For example, someone working 40 hours and volunteering another 40 hours at a church isn't likely to find a partner. Story 51. I observe how people treat those in service roles, including food service workers, housekeeping staff in hotels, front desk attendants, retail employees, and rideshare drivers. I pay attention to the way individuals are treated. Story 52. I work with someone who puts ketchup on his pizza. I find this behavior difficult to understand. Story 53. When people enter through a clearly marked entrance door or exit through a clearly marked exit door at a store such as Walmart. Story 54. Uncut tack stitch at the back of the coat, dress, or skirt, and tailors labels on the sleeves. Using the restroom on the plane without shoes. Story 55. Brush your coat. Clean your shoes. Finish chewing and swallowing the food in your mouth before you eat more. None of these actions is hard to do. Story 56. Parents who ignore their children when they seek attention in a polite manner, only to snap and yell, "What?" after the child becomes frustrated with being ignored. are sending the wrong message. It is harmful to ignore your children. By disregarding their good behavior, parents teach their kids that they only respond to negative actions. Eventually, the child may learn to resort to bad behavior as a way to gain any attention at all. Story 57. I work in the service department for a car dealership. If the car smells like marijuana and you are the type to fasten the seatbelt and then sit on top of it, I am judging you seriously. Story 58. I've noticed that many people add a soft K at the end of words that end in ing, or when they leave out letters in words. For example, instead of saying kitten, they say it like kitten, or instead of didn't, they pronounce it like didn't. This drives me insane, and when I hear people talk like this, I immediately speak up. It's not that they have a speech impediment or are special needs, because they aren't. Story 59. People with poor toenail hygiene often wear open-toed shoes in public and clearly do not take care of their feet. It is reasonable to assume that they may not take care of other aspects of their lives as well. Story 60. Screaming children. I try really hard not to judge, as I know parents are often just doing their best. This is an automatic judgment I have been working on for a while. Story 61. When people don't hold doors open for others, it reflects a loss of value in performing positive gestures as a society. If someone neglects to hold the door open, it reveals something about their character. I don't require anyone to hold the door for me, but it is important to observe how they treat those around them. Story 62. When their house is very messy, I say that I won't judge, but secretly I do because I'm a clean freak. Story 63. People who attempt to film performances on their phones while attending a play or musical engage in illegal behavior, and posting such footage can be harmful to many individuals. Additionally, it is disrespectful to other audience members. Story 64. Obvious lack of hygiene, not just when someone is ill but as a regular pattern of not taking care of themselves. Story 65. Being inarticulate does not require an English degree to communicate a point clearly and concisely. Story 66. If you use the N-word, I automatically assume you have low intelligence, and yes, even if they are black, I assume that. It is a derogatory term that should not be used. Additionally, if you use the term women when referring to one female rather than multiple, then you are misusing the language. Story 67. How they treat waitstaff at restaurants. How they treat animals. Whether they return their shopping cart to the corral after loading their groceries. Story 68. When people sit next to me on public transportation and invade my space, it makes me uncomfortable, especially in the summer when skin is exposed. Story 69 might be too specific, but 1. If you walk past a custodian while they are sweeping or mopping and do not make an effort to avoid stepping in their dirt pile or on the already mopped floor, or if you do not sincerely apologize for any inconvenience, I will think you deserve to slip on a banana peel. When individuals ask everyone in public spaces to prioritize accommodating their children, assuming we all believe kids should be prioritized in every space, I will judge you for your sense of self-importance and the future entitlement I know you are raising your children to have. I was going to mention people who do not put their grocery carts away, but I do not secretly judge them. I vocalize my frustration and encourage them to be responsible members of society, or I yell boo loudly while driving by. Story 70. When people don't return their shopping carts at the supermarket and leave them to collide with other cars, it is quite inconsiderate. Story 71. When people walk slowly or drag their feet, it is noticeable. Similarly, when they breathe through their mouths without any reason, it draws attention. Story 72. Amazing, I should open this thread. I'm in line at the grocery store and this man is throwing a tantrum because he can't use his electronic benefits transfer card for cigarettes. I think the whole line is judging him. Story 73. When people let their kids run wild at restaurants, it can be disruptive. I have 3 children, and they know it's not acceptable to be loud and unruly. I understand the idea of letting kids be kids, but in a public place, it's essential to respect others who have paid for a nice meal. It's unfair for them to endure loud and disruptive behavior while the parents seem indifferent to the discomfort it causes. Story 74. When I see graduated from the School of Hard Knocks on their profile, it makes me think that someone made some poor decisions. Story 75. People who continue to support their church or religion, regardless of the number of children who are harmed, are often met with significant criticism. Story 76. I understand that I may receive backlash for this, but I feel compelled to share my thoughts. Being extremely overweight, not just mildly, is hard for me to comprehend. Having grown up without enough food and often going to friends' houses to eat, I struggle to understand how a person can consume so much that they weigh over 400 pounds. Additionally, we only have one body. Why would someone treat their body poorly? I simply don't understand it. You can disagree with me, but that's how I feel. Story 77. Parents who bring their newborns, less than 30 days old, shopping make me want to scream. What are you thinking? Is Costco really that important? Just use a delivery service instead. Story 78. Morbidly obese individuals taking all the handicap scooters while I observe elderly people with canes struggling to push a cart. Many seem to think they can bring their small dogs to ride in the basket, but none have a service vest. I respect service animals in a store, but not personal pets. These are just a few of my frustrations. Story 79. I believe in total transparency, and while I'm not proud of it, I find myself judging individuals who are significantly overweight and present themselves in a sloppy manner. I'm not perfect, but if your idea of healthy living involves consuming several 3-liter sodas a day and a regular diet of fast food, and your children are also overweight, I perceive you differently than others and, quite frankly, have little respect for you. There, I said it. Story 80. I secretly judge men because most of them have no fashion sense. They typically wear black, blue, and gray, often paired with brown work boots. Story 81. I am a woman, and I judge other women in the gym for wearing short spandex shorts and sports bras. I feel additional judgment towards those who wear full makeup and style their hair. If men are required to wear shirts in the gym, then women should adhere to the same standard. Additionally, I find it frustrating when people stand directly in front of the weight rack. Story 82. Downvoting individuals here merely for asking a question or for sharing their own experiences is concerning. It seems like there are many frightened people who are unsettled by the reality of others' lives. While I should have compassion for that fear, the behavior makes me angry because it is immature and petty, masked by the anonymity of the downvote. Story 83. People who allow their dogs to lick their mouths likely have dogs. I assume your house has a distinct odor. Story 84. Wearing pajama pants in public, especially with slippers, is frustrating. Do you have no pride in your appearance? It drives me crazy. Story 85. When people ask the same questions and provide the same answers, it does not create genuine interest and does not make them interesting. Story 86. The way people behave in the sauna can be quite concerning. If you enter the sauna, chewing gum loudly with headphones on, playing music at a volume everyone can hear, taking selfies, speaking loudly with a friend without being aware of the surroundings, wearing excessive clothing, being inconsiderate of others using the space, such as lying down while several people are left standing. I find this behavior quite judgmental. Story 87. I work in an adult novelty store. We don't judge customers unless they behave inappropriately, but we do express our opinions about those who do. We also have discussions about people who attempt to bring their babies inside. Story 88. Cutting me off while I'm talking, not returning the grocery cart, and criticizing something they do not understand simply because it is popular. Story 89. Lip filler, wearing sunglasses when it's not sunny, wearing Crocs, chewing gum, doing push-ups without full lockout or without their chest touching the ground, taking dogs into businesses that don't allow them, having a soul patch, having children, standing on the escalator, drinking coffee in public. There's more. How much time do you have? Story 90. When I am driving on the highway behind someone, and they decide it is a great moment to use windshield wiper fluid. Story 91. I came here legally. Those who did not should go back or be deported. Will you share the privileges you had growing up that allowed you to be among the less than 1% who made it here? You come from a high Hindu caste, your parents could pay for a top education, You grew up in a city with leading universities, and you secured a job at a consulting firm after the year 2000, which enabled you to come here. Story 92. I hope I won't receive criticism for this, but I secretly judge people who only eat bland food and have a low spice tolerance. Boring. Story 93. People who cannot put their phones down during a doctor's appointment are a concern. It's frustrating when I, as a pediatrician, walk into a room and someone is talking on the phone. It is even more challenging when parents and children cannot put their games or TikTok down long enough to talk to me and allow me to perform my examination. Story 94. When someone uploads their photos to a shared album and includes multiple nearly identical copies of each photo. Story 95. When people come to an abrupt stop while exiting Walmart to have their receipt checked. It was not even a common practice 6 years ago because the store only checked receipts when a shopper had large unbagged items. Story 96. Littering, smoking in public places, being rude to cashiers, negotiating a lower price, being loud indoors such as in a mall, bus, or store, and using their phone excessively in memorable locations like concerts, museums, gardens, restaurants, and beaches. Story 97. Their music tastes are more specific, such as pop, emo, and nu metal. It's not a secret. It's more good-natured ribbing. I expect the same when I share my music preferences. I honestly don't care. Music is subjective. The only thing I judge people on is certain foods, particularly avocado. I don't like guacamole either, but I'm not judgmental about that, just avocado. Story 98. Paying a large amount for a car can be problematic. Not affording a car outright is acceptable, but using that situation to overextend yourself for a luxury vehicle is often misguided. Story 99. I judge people for various reasons. I believe this has partly contributed to my longevity. Are you referring to aspects that might be considered negative? Story 100. Being loud in the evenings when living with others. Getting numerous deliveries. People who always have an unpleasant odor. People who hold their phones right up to their ears. People who say, "Oh, my dog is friendly," without realizing that this does not make it acceptable for their dog to approach someone's picnic. Grown adults who believe that pink is for girls and blue is for boys. Parents who are on their phones while their children are trying to talk to them. Story 101. Perceived lack of consistent principles and fairness leads to distrust in individuals who lack articulable rules or moral constraints for living their lives. They change their minds easily, are too inconsistent, and are often unwilling to bear the consequences of their own choices. For example, many people demonstrate a concerning willingness to inflict pain on others, even when they themselves cannot endure the same suffering. Story 102. People who feel the need to smoke very close to non-smokers, especially strangers or children, can be quite inconsiderate. While it is your choice as an adult, just because I do not have asthma does not mean I want to smell like an ashtray. It is even more frustrating for me when I am wearing something nice for a special occasion that I just washed, only to have the fresh scent ruined in less than 20 minutes because a relative or someone else could not give me a moment to distance myself before lighting up. Story 103. I have no friends who smoke or support MAGA. Being autistic, I tend to be an absolutist. I know there are good people who are deceived or addicted, but I really don't want that around me at all. I have my history and reasons. Story 104. People who cannot be bothered to put their phones down concern me. I am using my phone now, but I am relaxing on my couch. I don't understand how some people feel the need to check their phones while driving or walking around the grocery store, often bumping into other shoppers. It is disheartening to see individuals looking at their phones the entire time they are having dinner with someone else. It makes me sad. As a society, we seem unable to experience anything anymore without being on our phones. Story 105. People who take their shoes off on planes and passengers in cars who put their feet on the dashboard, especially if they smudge the windshield with their toes. Individuals who stop in the middle of high-traffic areas, like at the end of an escalator or right outside a door, display a lack of awareness of their surroundings. Constant interrupters, especially those who interject with unrelated remarks, can be quite disruptive. Additionally, it is worth noting the challenges posed by individuals with severe obesity. Story 106. If your stickers are upside down when you open your laptop, I may question your intelligence a little. Story 107. Getting plastic surgery to change a unique feature to fit Hollywood beauty standards. Before anyone comes at me, the original poster mentioned secretly judging. If you want to lighten your skin, get a nose job, and enhance your bust, I won't say anything out loud. I'll just privately lose some respect for you. Story 108. I might receive some criticism for this, but poor work ethics negatively impact everyone. If you're unhappy with your job, consider finding another one instead of making it difficult for your coworkers. Story 109. Being so averse to conflict that they won't defend a friend makes me question their integrity. I do not see those individuals as peacemakers or mediators. Story 110. Being a supporter of Trump, being rude to waitstaff, being a serial killer, committing arson, and posting incredibly obvious things to questions like this just for gaining karma. Story 111. How people interact with their mothers is intriguing. I am not sure why, but I find it interesting to focus on relationships with mothers rather than fathers. Story 112. This statement is very specific, and most may not know or understand what I mean. I judge people in education if they tend to have a deficit perspective of students of color, but do not show the same perspective when it comes to white or white-adjacent students. Story 113. Stickers or signs on your car are unnecessary. Nobody cares about your hobbies, opinions, or family. It's not essential to seek the attention of strangers wherever you go. Story 114. People who have never traveled outside their own country often hold certain beliefs. I recognize that this perspective may not be accurate, but it still crosses my mind. Story 115. People shouldn't judge others in the first place. Unfortunately, individuals often cannot leave others alone and allow them to enjoy their unique interests. Story 116. I would probably secretly judge those who criticize others without reason, particularly regarding Doctor Who. However, aside from that, I don't judge anyone else because, unlike most people, I genuinely care. Story 117. Having children when unmarried can be complicated, especially if the belief in marriage varies among individuals. It's concerning to see some people become parents within just 1 year of dating a partner who may not be faithful. This decision can lead to challenges, such as parenting responsibilities without support. Story 118. Rude manners include poor table etiquette, ineffective communication, ignoring others, taking advantage of individuals, speaking condescendingly, unsolicited physical contact, interrupting conversations, and making comments about aspects of life that people cannot control. Story 119. People who believe they are superior to others due to a single attribute. For instance, if someone is an older sibling and feels that this grants them greater responsibility than those around them. Story 120. When people use slurs, they should not. For example, Habibi, you are the most pale Arab I know, and you cannot use the racial slur. I dislike when people use slurs in general, but it bothers me when someone uses slurs that do not apply to them. For instance, do not normalize brown people calling each other that racial slur. It is just not how it works. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.